Okay, we're live back on Unicorn Dispatch Live. I'm your host, Bryson Bort, founder and CEO of SCYTHE. I'm joined by my good friend here, Thomas Quinn. I thought it was funny you have Thomas. You usually go by Tom, who has not realized what he signed up for, although he has spent a decent amount of time with me. So I guess he perhaps does know the kinds of hijinks to expect. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks very much. So now you actually found out something interesting with me that you may not have even realized. Usually what I do is I address almost everything officially as Thomas Quinn. And if anyone says, "Hi, Thomas Quinn, we're good friends," it was like, we're really not. That's my input. That's an initial input validation.
I see. Deception technology at its finest.
Bryson, you hit the nail on the head, right? So it was like, anyway, I just figured I'd call that out. Now that'll be on the internet, so people will know.
Well, besides that introduction, where you've now undone your deception tech for all of our listeners, what mistakes in life led you to this point?
So, it's a great way to frame that question. The one thing I found was taking a step in a direction that I felt uncomfortable with. And I'll try to negative phrase that a little bit in the way that you did. It's like listening to others too much and not listening to yourself. I find those are usually pretty big mistakes. Like, hey, don't jump off the cliff. Don't eat, sushi from a gas station out in the middle of Phoenix. Like, that's probably pretty good advice, but I'll share this. I was given advice like, don't take that job in New York City. Like, it'll really do things to you or something. And it's like, wow, it really seems really great. I'm going to have to go with my gut and take that. And anyway, I've walked through many open doors as they've come through. I found that to be helpful, and I'd rather make my own mistakes and learn from them rather than solely relying on other people.
Well, so I think you've just given the best metaphor I've ever heard for being a CISO, which is don't eat the sushi at the gas station. So why did you decide to eat the sushi at the gas station and become the CISO of a major financial firm?
So maybe to go just a little bit on that analogy, there were gas stations that I passed and decided, and not having sushi there. And it's like, maybe I should get a Nobu instead. Like, so I think it's crucially important to find places that you feel that their mission, their ethics, the people that you meet are often like a really good example of who the company is. And just like a stock price, I think a stock price is supposed to tell you everything that there's available in the public for a company. The people that you meet in a company, it's a good indicator about what you're going to see when you're really there. So, past the gas station with the sushi sign, find Nobu, and then you're going to be in good shape.
So, how does that translate to your career?
I think I've been very fortunate to have selected some very interesting industries. So the Department of Defense, federal government's an industry, and there's career paths in it. They hire, they retire, they do work, they deliver services. Right? It really is. I consider it an industry vertical. I've been in financial services since the mid '90s. And the way I've always seen it is capital markets enables people's dreams to occur. And whether that's a loan for a home, retirement accounts, good financial advice, maybe credit cards to a business or a line of credit to a business to enable them to do their passion. That's how I've always looked at financial services, and I've been grateful for a career in that area.
So, what is the most common misconception you think of the CISO? And the reason I ask for that is, I mean, you've been in one of my CISO workshops, and you've watched me torture CISOs live for half of a day. And one of the common things that I like to challenge them is, most folks don't really know what you do, right? The folks who work for you generally don't even know what you do in a lot of these places. And so what do you think is the most common misconception there? We have most likely an audience of practitioners here. You get to talk directly to them. What do you want them to know about being a CISO that you don't think they get?
Two things I'll talk about, and then if I don't know if this is interactive, but if there's questions, I'm happy to take them. And by the way, if people disagree with me, that's fine too. But one of the things I find is it's relationship and trust building outside of the meetings, outside of the board presentations, outside of the management committee presentations, outside of status updates, outside of red team reports, being presented. It's the building of that relationship outside of the meeting. Then the second point I would raise is it's really being in service to other people. And what I found to be effective is by helping other people achieve the goals that they need to achieve, you're creating space and time for them to hopefully help you. And what I find is, just to build on that just a tiny bit, most people you run into are, want to be helpful. I found that through my career. Right? There's the exceptions, sure. Often they can't be because of constraints. Like, I'm on a hamster wheel. I can't get off of the hamster wheel, and the hamster wheel increased, revolutions by 2% last week because 2 of the hamsters got fired. Like, okay, I get it. If I were to ask you to do something, it would be like increasing the hamster wheel rotation by another 2%, and that's just not going to be helpful for humans, maybe. So how can you decrease the hamster wheel speed? How can you maybe, give that person a break and get on the hamster wheel for them for, a couple of cycles or something? So trying to find space and time for people and on your team too, I think is crucial. Helping others achieve their goals, not yours.
So there's 3 directions of management. Everybody in the start of their career learns the first one, right? The first time you get the boss and you have to learn how to manage up. Eventually, most folks go into their first management role and they learn how to manage down. And you still have to manage your boss. As you get to the executive level, the most critical part of what Tom is, referenced there was managing sideways. And this speaks directly to the security challenge that we have a lot of the times, is where security is supposed to be a partner, but often becomes the office of no, and why weren't we involved? That sideways management is a critical executive skill set for being able to solve that problem and helping security have that awareness being tied into those things. So the question from the audience: what are some common mistakes for CISOs who are starting off this career that can occur?
That's much longer answer than the time that we had. One of the things I find is, the CISO book and the things that you learned in maybe school or a certification class is probably 10% of the gig. And I think so one thing, I'll highlight one thing in particular about maybe first-time CISOs is the expectations are going to be high, like super high, and you've got to be honest with people. And as Bryson said, being the department of no is not helpful, but you've got to be honest with people on your capabilities, who needs to help, asking for help, right? Another portion of honesty, humility, and openness, taking feedback. All those things I think are important. And I'll give one example. It actually is from my first CISO gig. So one of the first things I did is I did a bit of a listening tour, or walking around tour. And as Bryson I thought it was really helpful the way he framed it, right? Manage your team, manage your boss, manage up, and then manage out, I think it's a good, very good, quick example about what you need to do. So I'm speaking to the head of compliance, and I said, hey, just tell me what you think about the team. Tell me what you think about the program. And I'm pretty sure no one's asked, no, my predecessor probably hadn't asked them those kind of things before. And it's like, your training is really bad. It's like, well, what do you mean? Because it takes too long and there's a lot of overlap with the privacy training. And it's like, it's like, thanks for the feedback. I'm going to work on that. I'm going to get back to you, I promise. And I go back to my training lead and said, hey, listen, I just got this feedback. I just took the training, the privacy training and the security training, and I agree. I said, I think that we could probably get this down to 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, tighten it up a little bit. And the person's and great person, great leader, cared about what they were doing. Person sitting across from me, and really, I could tell wanted to say something. And it's like, hey, well, what do you think? And pause, and then said, don't you care about security? So it was like, here's another thing too, which is important. Like, you have to know where people are coming from, which is like honest, ethical, hardworking people, those kind of things. I know where the reaction, you could have taken a couple different reactions. And it was like, of course, yes, I do. Please let me explain myself even more. And let's work together to make sure this is the best 20 to 30 minute security training as possible. And 2 weeks later or so, we're working on it together. And it's like, wow, this is really pretty good. We roll it out to tens of thousands of people shortly thereafter. I go back to the head of compliance, and Bryson, I'm going to finish up, by the way. Go back to the head of compliance, and it's like, hey, I just want to get your feedback, right? I heard what you said. We did this. What do you think about this now? I love it. Everybody, and this is somebody who was covering off on not only compliance, but had a lot of relationships with their investments teams. They loved it too. It was quick, to the point. They were there. So when I think about all that, right, we saved the firm 30 minutes times tens of thousands of people. We created an effective training for awareness and those kind of things that they wanted to consume. And then the feedback was, wow, that was, you listened to us, and this is great. Like, we want to partner with you. So I think it's crucial for an early CISO is to really ask for feedback. Don't take anything personal. Do your best not to take things personal. I mean, I do, but do your best not to take things personal, and then look at it through a clear lens, and then keep repeating.
So I actually have a story tied into that. So if you listen to what Tom said, you'll notice all of the things he shared about mistakes and what is required in the role. None of those were technical. Executive jobs aren't inherently technical. And I can think of a first-time CISO that I know, and he was fired. And the reason he was fired is most folks are like, oh, CISOs get fired to take the liability for the breach, et cetera, right? They're the scapegoat. In this case, he was fired because when he came into the role, he stayed technical, and he mired himself in the details of the technical execution when what he should have been doing was staying aligned up and sideways, as opposed to constantly trying to understand and execute downward only. Okay. Another question from the audience. Did you ever have a moment where you had a good, valid recommendation? Actually, you know what? I forgot. I can pop these up. Others in the org would not buy in, whether upward, lateral, or downward in the org chart, and how did you overcome that?
Yes, many times. So believe it or not, and maybe I'll harken back to the earlier comment from my colleague who was working on training, like, don't you care about security? Like, yes, actually people do care about security. So often what I find, and that hamster wheel discussion I think is a good one too to be thinking about, is why is to ask I'm not sure if people are familiar with the 5 whys or a fishbone diagram to decompose problems. But what I find, so I'll tell you about the 5 whys just real quick. So keep asking the question why 5 times. And eventually, as you start to decompose that, you keep asking and asking and asking in a professional way, not in a nudgy way, right? But just like, hey, I just want to understand, like, why wouldn't you want to do that? Invariably, it's not. It turns out not to be a security issue at all. Invariably, as you start to go down there, it turns out to be one of these things, and it's actually the root problem that needs to get solved for, the root cause problem that needs to be solved for. I really don't have enough time, and there's 6 other security things you've got me doing, or I'd love to do it, but my manager said unless this thing has been approved through process X by human Y, I can't do it. Or that's going to cost, I would love to do it, but that's going to cost $1 million to go get done. And I don't have the money in the couch cushions. So as you start to really get down there, and especially I think for a senior security leader, and maybe at a larger firm too, right? But I think it also works at smaller firms. Now you're solving the actual problem that needs to be solved for, and that you can help with, which is, wow, we need to find $1 million. So that is those root cause problems that really need to be solved for. And I'm empathetic. I love technology, actually. I still try to meddle around with it, regardless of what my team, or not regardless, even though my team gives me feedback about how involved sometimes I get. But that's passion and love for how technology can be used to enable and help people. But anyway, so in those kind of cases, then it's like, okay, well, if I really want to get this done, then I need to help somebody like follow process X and get to human Y, and I'm going to spend some of my time doing that or effort doing it. Or I need to go to the finance committee with the person and probably the person's boss, create a comprehensive recommendation for what it is, and already know what probably the trade-offs need to be. I think that's the hard work that is not technical at all. But that's the hard work of getting things done, because you don't have infinite budgets. No one has infinite budgets. You don't have infinite time.
And that, I think, is a key insight into the executive view, right? It's all about prioritization. Nobody would ever say, I don't care about security. I mean, there's always going to be the anecdote, but most executives are going to be pragmatic. It's not that they don't care about security. It's a question of prioritization. How much time, how much resource, how much money, what are my capabilities, and how relevant is my risk tolerance to that service, that offering that this is tied to? And again, another theme of what Tom has been talking about is, well, that comes from dialogue. That comes from asking. So when I teach this, when I teach the practitioners, one of the things I always highlight is there's 2 kinds of companies in the world: those that care about security and those that don't. Well, you've already heard me. It's not that nobody doesn't care about security. They just have a different priority, or there's an educational component, because the ones that don't tend to be compliance focused, because that's 100% probability of 100% impact of a risk. I will get in trouble if I'm not compliant. That is the requirement for business operations. What I invest on top is where security comes into play. And so the reason I frame that for practitioners is many of them get frustrated with the like this question, right? We have a good idea. Why don't they get it? Well, once you understand their priorities and where they are, then you can now approach it from an educational perspective. It's not that they're against you, but you have to figure out where you fit in. And I phrase it that way intentionally. Security has to figure out how it fits in, because we are a follower. We are support to the business. We are not the business itself.
And Bryson, if I could just jump in and give another example. So I've managed a DLP, a data loss prevention program, at probably every firm I've worked at. And when I arrived at my current company, it was an optical DLP program. So there was a program update, there was a program manager, there was some technology, some capital spent, and we blocked a bunch of stuff. Like, that's the optics of DLP. And lots of people probably weren't very happy, because invariably you're blocking something that's legitimate. Anyway, what I recognized was, like, I need a model to be effective on this. It's like, I need the business to tell me what's important. That's hard to do. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to just ask them and then they would tell me something that could be decomposed into a set of requirements and deployed and then work. So I started modeling the business's use of email in a way that the business teams would understand. I wish it was there before. I wish somebody else had done it. And I wish that, there were really good requirements so that it would be easy for me and my team to go implement them. It's not reality. So I took the time, modeled it from, to, date, time, file name, file attachment size, all these other variables that are in there, joined it with corporate directory information, and then trended it over time. That's what I mean by modeling. And then I played it back. It's like, hey, do you realize that these people in this group on this floor, use email in this kind of way? Not that it was good or bad, not that you were sending PII out or like sensitive data. It wasn't for that. It was to create a context so that we could engage and talk through the same kind of data and the same kind of lens. Once they said, oh yeah, I see myself in what you've just done. Like, I see us in there and I actually kind of know what they're doing. It's like, no, we're going to call that a business rule and a requirement. And then we're going to go to the next one and the next one and the next one across all the aspects: legal, compliance, investments, maybe finance, all the business units that are there, including tech. A lot of pre-work that was required to get to the point of, like, now we're going to block. Like, now, because you understand what we can do, what we can't do, what we could do, should do, now we're going to start blocking. And we're going to make it easy for you. So those teams got trained. Those teams get the alerts, not mine. The business teams get the alerts. The business teams are trained to release things. The business teams understand. The business teams get the telemetry and the reporting and the like. My team just, like, is on the beach on, like, a heat lamp. It's like, what are you doing? So part of that was, like, what problem am I really trying to solve for? In that case, it was like, how do you get the business to be engaged in an effective way to help set the security program? And then how do I get my team space and time and off the hamster wheel, so they're just not grinding away on, like, looking at blocked emails and alerts and those kind of things. So anyway, Bryson, hopefully that was helpful for some of the folks on the call.
You're getting a lot of positive feedback in the comments. All right, so this one is going to be a bit broader. So how do you balance quickly adopting newer technologies like artificial intelligence without falling prey to false promises and faulty tech? This is also going to answer half of Chris's question, because this ties into vendor relationships, because artificial intelligence ties to third-party risk. And this ties to our conversation in San Francisco last week, where you talked about how you were looking at adopting agentic AI and the risks and solutions to that.
Yeah, it really is a great question. So I'd like to split it, and then I can cover both if we have time, but we can cover one. So one, how does the security team use it? The other question is, how's the company that you're working for use it? And then what your role is in each, because it is slightly different. So I'll cover off on how the security team uses it. And how the firm uses it, maybe what our role is in that, unless we want to flip it. So I'll count down to 3 seconds before I start answering. One, you tell me which one to answer, but I'm going to answer the security one, the security team use. 2, 3.
Both are in.
Well, I think we have a hard stop at 11, or we have a stop at 11. Does that
no, you've got 30 more minutes.
Oh, I got to tell somebody. Well, there you go. So I will cover both. But I may have to cut short because bad calendar management for me. For the 30 minutes, I may have to.
So lesson to the attendees, because I think this is the third or fourth attempt with Tom. Calendar management with executives is a real challenge.
I'm grateful for Bryson's patience. I am. You got to know I am. And for my person who helps me with my calendar. I'm always the problem. Believe you me, it's never them. So how's the team use it? We've been using AI for over a decade in security teams. We call it machine learning, like old AI maybe, right? But we've had that embedded into the products that we use pretty regularly, right? For that, it allows for scale, research and development to be done, modeling of things, and then finding interesting trends and interesting events. For modern AI, so we're using it for, and I promise I'll get to the tech cyber issue side of this. For modern AI, the team's using it every day to improve, like if we're doing reporting, like red team reporting, assessments that we may be doing, app assessments that we may be doing, identity and access management teams, regular reporting out for the program. We're using Microsoft native tools and the AI that they have there to make reporting easier for the team. So again, creating space and time for the team to be focused on other things, and we found that to be pretty effective. We're also using it for so we're Splunk Shop for SIM. The team is using prompts, right, to look at data as well, and we have automation orchestration in there too. But we're also using it there, and the more that is a native interface for the tools that we're using, we're adopting those things too. We're on a journey to place our EDR in the next couple months. Budget's been approved. The engineering resources inside my team and outside my team to help us, right, all been approved. We're moving along the path, which is great. But this platform we're moving to, has AI enabled right from the get-go for it. So we're very excited about how that's going to continue to create space and time for the humans, and just as importantly, right, allow us to get the benefit of how AI is actually being used by the company itself that we're partnering with. But there are smaller firms, right, that we regularly keep in touch with. So I work with our private equity teams. I'm involved in at my company, and then for market color for companies that they may want to consider investing in, I work with other outside private equity and VC firms. And what that allows me to do is just get an idea what's coming either over the horizon or it's like right here. And there's a lot of companies that are leveraging AI to help solve problems. So I try to be an informed consumer, and hopefully that answers the actual question, is by getting a feel for what's going on now and what's coming, investing in AI and partnering with companies on it as well, making sure our teams are leveraging it and trained up on it. That allows us to be educated consumers. And also we bias towards hiring engineers. We bias towards hiring software engineers or cyber engineers. And they understand how to use data, find data, get data, manipulate data, write code and stuff. And that, in some cases, we build things where there isn't like a a great tool maybe. And all of that allows us to be educated consumers. And when we see something, and especially if it's like a niche thing, we'll bring it in, we'll test it. We have a test harness. We have, by building space and time for the humans on the team, they have the time to go do it. And then we have a test harness, we have an environment for it. And if it works as expected, then we'll use it. I have found like sometimes when we do the testing, and I think for our automation and orchestration tools, we've not been successful in some cases. Bryson, I got to take a quick pause, everybody. Sorry.
Okay. CISO doing CISO things. Live on air. You can't script this. We can tell by the fact that he didn't have a panicked face. At least it wasn't an incident. Let's look through some of the questions. Some parts that I will weigh in on. Where he was talking about knowing where people are coming from. I see this a lot in the IT-OT convergence space challenge, right? So operational technology in the last 15 years has become networked and increasingly sophisticated, which, as everybody knows, means more risk surface area. And so you have a traditional space like manufacturing or energy where these systems were more mechanical systems and it was a preventative maintenance challenge. Now, with the introduction of this computerization and networking, you now have cybersecurity risk. And so it's the same challenges like what's Tom talking about with engagement and relationships is the same challenge I see in that IT and OT convergence, where the IT folks have now assumed the cybersecurity responsibility. And it's a challenge of building the relationships across the line into the operational technology world to being able to work with them. And the most common mistake I see is IT comes in the way security does and goes, you need security, we're going to tell you how to do it. And you may be surprised the traditional folks don't necessarily respond well to that, let alone who are you? Because there isn't a relationship. Even though you work at the same company, you don't have a relationship. And the best example of that I can think of is this one team, and they had built a very detailed architecture for how they wanted to redesign the OT environment to introduce traditional IT monitoring and detection capabilities. And they were frustrated because for 18 months, they couldn't get this architecture, this transformation to be accepted by the company. Again, we have the right answer. Why aren't they accepting it? And I was like, well, have you gone and talked to the operations side of the house? And they're like, yes, we had this meeting with the senior vice president. So you can imagine this woman, she runs the profit and loss of the whole North America region, right? She's a large reason the company exists and makes money. And I was like, okay, well, how did that meeting go? And they're like, well, she didn't accept what we were talking to do. And I was like, well, why not? And they're like, well, we presented it to her and we told her what we wanted. And back to what Tom was talking about, I was like, well, did you ask? What were the operations senior vice president's priorities? And then figure out how you fit in with those. And that's how a way to build a relationship where you can bring security into an operational paradigm. So I was just free-forming off some earlier stuff, Tom, while you had to step away and demonstrate being a CISO in real time.
Thanks. But so maybe if that's, I'll pause on like how the security teams are thinking about adopting it, how some of these pillars of what we do allow for time and space, right, for experimentation. And I encourage my team, right, to come up with interesting ideas. And then we one thing I didn't cover, right, by freeing space and time using automation and orchestration. Well, so modernizing our technology, we're rigorous at doing that. Automation, orchestration of the tasks that the team does, rigorous. And then using data to create insight, we do as just a course of our day. But that's a flywheel that creates free cash flow. And that allows us the flexibility, right? So we're creating time and space for the team that we have, free cash flow. If the folks on the call don't understand that concept, like that will get every investor's immediate attention. and every CEO's immediate attention. It's like, hey, that's a beautiful phrase, but allows us to self-fund a variety of. I'll say goodbye to my wife.
Bye.
But that gives a lot of flexibility where I don't need to really ask for too much permission, because I've already have asked for permission. I can reinvest the savings that we've found. That's an important thing to have in your pocket for doing. And the way I think about it was what I said before: modernization, automation, orchestration, and data-led insights for that. And then building trust, right? Another pillar that we covered off earlier. So how the firm is thinking about it. So I think there's for I think most companies, right? It's the promise of AI, and it's a really good point that the person asked about questions earlier, about the siren sound or song of AI. I agree. You've got to keep that in mind. And when you start doing the 5 whys for that, right? Another good thing that we talked about as well. It's like, hey, we need secure AI. It's like, okay, well, what's that mean? I don't know, but we need some. So it's like, okay, like why and who and how. So one of the really important things that my company did was create a steerco, get all the right people in there, set a baseline policy for what's acceptable and what's not acceptable for usage, train people up, train the firm up on that as well. And then instead of giving everybody access on day one, it was really, we're going to be very careful about prioritizing a use case. And we picked 3. And we measured it, like what were the inputs, what were the outputs, what was our ROI. And I was not the lead. So I think that to me, that governance, measurement, structure of the program was key, and that everyone realized that they needed to lean in. The phrase I hear often is like, security is everybody's problem. It's like, well, sure, that's a good phrase, but seeing it in practice like, hey, this is a priority program for the firm. Everyone's going to lean in. Everyone's going to make it a priority. Everyone's going to be thinking about upside risk, downside risk, those kind of things. That was super beneficial for us. And then over time, letting others, much more widely have access to do certain things in certain ways. So that, anyway, I hope that was maybe helpful, right? It really was a firm-wide initiative, maybe less biasing on this was a tech thing, and much more biasing on like, what's the business outcomes that we really want to get out of this, and how are we actually going to measure it? And then, maybe some of these things aren't going to work out. Maybe some of these things aren't suitable for it. But it was the journey was really important. And I think top-down approach was really helpful. So, and then what I did find is some of the legacy security tools that we have in place and security processes, they were okay. Like they were okay generally, but AI is different. The way data is used is different. It's not a file. It's not an attachment. It's not a file share. It's different, and you need to think about things in a different way. I think I mentioned earlier about making sure that you've got good communications with stakeholders, which is like, listen, yes, we have good tools. We have good capabilities. We have good programs. You have confidence in them. That's great. This is really different. This is going to be an investment in different kind of ways. And we should be, thinking about it in different ways too. And I think really it's like our AI experts at the firm really are driving what AI security looks like, AI controls look like, and making sure that they're in place. I'm sure there's, thank you for saying great answers. But that doesn't mean that people aren't going to say, "What are you cyber dudes doing?" or ladies doing? Because it happens all the time. It's like, aren't you doing something? And I think it's just communication. Here's what we can do. Here's what we can't do. And maybe it's like, if you want us to do more, fine. Like, here's what I think it is. It's $1 million and this, and you have to be comfortable in them saying, I'm not going to pay for it. We're not going to do it. And it's like, well, neither am I. And I think that is a no that CISOs have to get comfortable with. Not that, no, don't do that necessarily, but no, I'm not going to do it. And that's a different kind of no. And that takes courage and conviction. And that's real risk when you say, I'm not going to do it versus you can't do it. There you have it. That's my answers.
So following from artificial intelligence, as we discussed, artificial intelligence is going to be a third-party risk management challenge. So let's talk TPRM and your personal perspective on how you approach vendors. Is there a partnership? Is there transactional? Is there both?
So for anyone who, I'm not sure if there's people who make product and sell services on the call, but I'll take. So there's a couple of different answers to that. So firstly, third-party risk management. One thing I find is, if the program is primarily survey based, so you're asking humans, and probably bots on the back end, right? But you're asking humans to fill out a form that you take back, a bunch of yeses of no's and some other words. It's more of a compliance exercise. Listen, it's probably necessary, especially if you're in a regulated entity. And even if you did things like security scorecard or BitSight, you get a feel for what the outside environment is for a given company, and that's insight. It is part of a story. But what you really want to know, but you don't want to be really accountable for, is the inside of what's going on. So the how people make the sausage at these vendors that you're using. So not security vendors per se, but vendors. And the thing I find, right, is like, well, wait a minute, like, business person X picked the vendor. How come cyber person Y is accountable for whether or not the vendor is doing something good or bad? Like, you've outsourced tech, you've outsourced the operations, you've outsourced that, and you're managing through a contract. Like, you should be familiar with what that is. That's part of that, building relationships, understanding what roles, responsibilities, and accountability is. I think it's a bad business for security people to be in, is to like attest to the fact that another company that you're doing work with is secure, whatever that means. I think the CEO of that other company should be attesting to it. Like, that makes total sense. Like, sure, separating it out, like, oh, the tech availability or service dial tone or the security, again, whatever that word means. It's like, no. It's like a stock price. We're buying you. And I think we've got at least 10, maybe 20 years worth of the way third-party risk works that isn't like that. So I think there's a lot to be thinking about for third-party risk management. I do think, though, if you think about that through the lens of operational resiliency, which is a good way to think about it. If they were just to go down, what would you do? And what the vendor or counterparty that you had were to go down for a while. I think the other thing to really kind of push on is recovery time objectives. I think sometimes those recovery time objectives in your GRC or whatever tool or contracts may be aspirational. But I think operational recovery time objectives, like what's really happening, I think that's the focus on. And if a vendor wasn't there, what would really happen? And BCP, disaster recovery, operational resiliency, I think there's a real opportunity to make that much more robust, less survey-based, as well. And that's one of those things like, well, who's going to do it? Why are you going to do it? So anyway, third-party relationship management, I think you should be clear-eyed on what your role is, what people expect you to do, and then making sure you're letting them know what you can and can't do is important there. So partnerships, and I'm not sure I fully followed the second question there. But do I see?
So I think what they're talking about, right? Like, so what does partnership look like with a vendor if there is partnership? Transactional is just like you pay the license, they do their job, and
yeah, if you mean outside of the security realm, just and in general, I think it is a great question. I think in some cases all you want is a transactional relationship with a vendor. Like we need this widget produced and it should come in on time. And for all variety of reasons, maybe that's okay. I think for partnerships, just trying to form this in my head dynamically. When I hear partnerships, what I really hear from that is spending a lot of human time with another company so that they really understand who you are, who they are, so that, adjacent, up, down relationship management thing, not just for the CISO, right? But if that's what partnerships is kind of defined as, like, we really need to know a lot about each other. I think there's many companies or some companies that you'd want to do that from a business perspective. And I think often the third-party risk management team calls those things like tier 1 vendors or top tier vendors or something, right? Where you've got these partnerships in. The challenge about that is when you think about that through the lens of tech or cyber, they're all tier 1 vendors, all of them. And that doesn't scale very well when you need to have a partnership with the internet, knowledge about it, the world. And there's got to be I think there's a lot of work that needs to get done there. And I'll just talk about one example, like source code, especially open source in particular, but source code in general that you're relying on others for. That's a lot going on there. And I think there are you need to have your own controls, but there are companies that are out there that you can buy services from. I talk about them like a water filtration plant, that when the software comes down, the lead, the dirt, bacteria, anything greater than 2 microns or whatever, it's filtered out for you. That kind of capability allows you to have more of an understanding about your vendors' software, right, coming down through there. And I think you're going to need that kind of help and partnership there. So I don't know. I feel like I'm a little all over the map on that discussion, but there's a lot to unpick there.
Checking it, time check. What is your cutoff?
Oh, I'm full to the. I disappointed somebody.
Oh, but you did disappoint all of us. So look at that. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. When it comes to an organization facing a critical incident, such as ransomware or a data breach, would all the accountability for this event be thrown on the CISO entirely?
So I think there's two aspects of. So firstly, I think accountability is an interesting word, and I think it's crucial to have those definitions checked out up front and not at time of incident. So I think we're going to keep coming back to relationships. We're going to keep coming back to, you need to let people know what you can and can't do. You have to let people know what you will and won't do, and to let people know, right? It's like, listen, whether or not, like, you want to say something like, hey, your baby's ugly, or the emperor has no clothes. I think it's crucial to make sure that you just don't assume accountability. right? I don't mean like assume like, oh, I think I should, like that you assume the responsibility, that you assume that accountability. I think it's crucial to say, listen, I don't mind it, but I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. We're not suited to do this. Getting that assessment of your ability to do accountability is important, and just telling people what that's about. So anyway, breach and alike. One of the things I find is if we separate the incident response from breach, from the blaming side of breach, often the CISO is going to be part of the incident response, and may, depending on what how your company has this designed, you may even be leading it. In my company, I'm a participant in general. There is a group that leads both business incident response and tech incident response, and then we're participants in there, whether it's a cyber native thing or not. We do tabletop exercises. That's another way to, by the way, to kind of showcase accountability, is those exercises, and then kind of pointing to people. It's like, hey, that's your decision, by the way, and that's how you need to be operating. Another good thing for training. But like when somebody looks around and saying like, who's to blame and what we're going to go do, I think if you haven't already laid the groundwork ahead of time of like, we're going to report on patching on a regular basis, we're going to do red team assessment, we're going to report on it, we're going to do architecture reviews for software, and we're going to do assessments for our infrastructure, and we're going to do assessments for our data management or whatever. It's important that you've got some amount of visibility in there, and then sharing the bad news on a regular basis to people, and then letting them know. It's like, listen, I'm here to alert you, and you are the owner, systems management, you're the owner, whatever those things are, but I'm telling you that these things aren't right. I think sometimes, depending on the culture, if you bring bad news to leadership, they must say, oh, well, I've got uptime. If something's insecure, that's your problem, and you've got to go fix it. Like as you're doing your assessments and things, as the part of the day job, it's crucial to lay out the groundwork for roles and responsibilities. And it's as basic as things like policies, like written policies telling people what their roles, responsibilities are, RACIs. Like I spent a lot of time trying to help people bring people along on what their responsibilities are. And again, it's trying to make it easy for them to understand their responsibilities. That DLP example was there, because you can't expect the security team to do it all. And as a security leader, you can't just throw up your hands and say, well, it's not me. And then I think it's crucial to have a rational strategy for how you're going to get how you as a leader are going to get everybody and portions of their time to get everyone together to get on a page saying, listen, this is how this fits into what we're doing. This is why it's important. Here's how I'm going to help you understand. Here's how I'm going to help deliver. Here's the small things I'm going to do on there to create space and time for you to think on there. So I think those principles that we spoke about early on, those practices that we spoke about early on, really scale across a lot of the questions that we've been covering.
All right, so I'm going to ask one final question to close this all out. We've talked about artificial intelligence. The reason artificial intelligence continues to come up, right, is AI is the bubble in the economy. So there's an economic piece there. There is it seems to be everywhere. And there's a lot of this combination from an enterprise perspective of FOMO all the way to the practitioner going, is this what's going to replace my job? Is this why the job market is weak? Because there are a lot of folks still looking for jobs, which has been unusual in the tech sector. What is your great prediction for how this is all going to play out? Should we really be afraid of artificial intelligence as a CISO who oversees an organization of lots of practitioners in this space? How do you look at the job market?
The modern CISO is expected to operate across people, business process, technology, and data, including AI, and have a view on risks and threats to end-to-end business practices and delivery. If you're operating in that way, and Bryson talked earlier in the discussion around somebody, a technical person, technical CISO, and then they spent more time maybe trying to solve some of the technology problems that probably need to be solved for, and then maybe less time thinking about this more broadly. That's what the CISO role is now. It's not becoming it. It is now. It's on the doorstep there, and I think it's important to recognize that and figure out whether or not that's you or not, and if you're willing to operate in that way. I think the job market is robust. Maybe it's not robust for buggy whip manufacturing. I don't know how old people are on the call.
I'm going to make the reference for you, the other people's money.
Thank you. I think if you're actually practicing, I use the phrase aspiring AI and then perspiring AI. But if you're perspiring AI, you're modernizing your technology, you're using automation and orchestration of all the tasks you do, and you're using data-led insight to create free cash flow, time, and space for your team. That wheel, that flywheel, is the thing that will allow you to continue to adapt. I think that, to me, right, the segmentation or unionization of groups called like risk or compliance, and maybe even legal, and I mean like legal or whatever too, and security. To me, I think those boundaries are really starting to be knocked down. And what I mean by that is, like, why isn't there, and there are, by the way, there are half a dozen that I'm aware of, AI-based legal services are available, contract negotiation, T's and C's, those kind of things, take the burden of what you're doing off the plate. Sorry, but my point of that is understanding how technology, including AI, enables the business and the risks associated to the end-to-end process. That kind of lens will be important. I still feel technical, but I also can speak. I feel like I can speak tech still. I can speak legal. I can speak compliance. I can speak HR. I can speak finance. I can speak investments. I can speak portfolio analysis. Being multilingual in that way, I think, is crucial for a CISO, because you need to be able to take all those things into account as you're starting to understand where you need to spend your time and how you need to influence others. So I think Jensen and NVIDIA said something like this very recently on a podcast. 5 years ago, somebody asked them, where would you send your kids for school? The program would be computer science. Now it would be the best plumber, doctor, lawyer, or whatever, or technologist for that matter, that you can be, because you'll have an AI assistant, or many of them, on your shoulders to make you even better. The people who embrace that approach, there are going to be roles for them in the future. There just will be. I think it's just another tool in your toolkit to bring. And maybe I'll leave everybody on this. Like, I'm a political science major, international relations. I find those, and I've done tech for almost 30 years, but I find some of those experiences, and also officer in the U.S. Navy for a bit of time too. All those experiences are helping me. I bring them to bear all the time. Communication, risk management, those kind of things. I bring them to bear all the time, but I have all these experiences, and the toolkits I have allow me to be effective where I need to be effective and how I need to be effective on a whole portfolio of audiences. So I find this to be the coolest gig in the world. I think it's some of the hardest problems are being solved, and people need the help. They want you to help them. And I think it's just incumbent upon, us in these roles, in these seats, to figure out the best way to help our colleagues and help our societies, our governments in a way that they want to be helped.
U.S. Navy gave me an incredible set of soft skills. Current employer, so that's why they hired me.
Yeah, lots of soft skills for sure. That's another story. I'm ever grateful for our country's investment in me, my education, and the like too. And I'm grateful to have been able to serve our country.
I have to respond. Go Army, beat Navy.
There you go. Well, anyway, I hope everyone got something out of this, Bryson. I hope this was a good use of their time.
Yeah, lots of positive feedback. Really appreciate your time, as well as demonstrating how busy a CISO is at a major financial, with both not doing proper calendar management and having to take a call in the middle of it. You can't really beat the real life experience more than that. Everybody else, tune in on the 13th of April. I'll be back with Josh Mason, who helped stand up the Noob Village, and we'll be talking about how to get into cybersecurity. Thanks, Tom.